The only objection to this was that we did not have revolutionary troops with us, and it would therefore be unwise to start an open fight. On the other hand, we could not contact Kaduna or Enugu since we had no access to Army signal network, and the public telephones had been disrupted. We decided at once to leave Lagos for Irosi. It was quicker to make Enugu than Kaduna from Lagos. As such, we decided to drive to Enugu in the ferret, so that if our own troops had been successful there, we could contact Kaduna. Now, it was already midday. Irosi was not yet located, but it was known that he had summoned troops from Ibadan. No news about Enugu, and no news about Kaduna. The young officers who were formerly with us were now flung afield. Some still fished for news for us. Some were back in their unit, and others had already been arrested by troops loyal to Irosi. Most of what we knew were by interrogating the troops around the NBC and the Federal Gas Officers Mess. They freely answered our questions, assuming that we were on Irosi's side, because we simply sat on the ferret as if newly summoned from another station. Nevertheless, those troops held their ground firmly. If we tried to enter into any of the positions into any military barrack whatsoever, we would have had to shoot our way in. The situation had become highly explosive. Any move that was contrary to the orders of Irosi would have sparked off a bloody fight. At this juncture, I led the troop of our only 4 ferrets, and we drove from Ikoyi through Ebutemeta and the Ikorodu Road. After the Maryland Junction, there was a heavy roadblock. Again, as if we were troops summoned by Irosi, we were allowed to pass, and we drove towards Ikorodu. Soon after passing the Majidun Bridge, we met troops of the 4th Battalion from Ibadan in Land Rovers and 3-tonners driving towards Lagos. I checked my time. It was 1:15 in the afternoon. I recalled that about 14 hours before, 5 majors were gathered to start this action. Now, only 2 of us were together. The remainder had vanished from our sight since 3:30 in the midnight. In the night, that is to say, only 4 hours after we started, and only 1.5 hours since each hour, when action actually began, we had lost Ifajuna and Okafor, both of whom were our only sources of truth, weapons, communication, and confidence. If we did not have those two in the first place, in view of the strategic post that they were holding, we would not have started at all. Now we were left in the lodge. Chukwuka, too, had not joined up with us, and Obieno did not report with his troops. We had lost valuable time seeking for those things that should have been made available to us, and which we previously believed were available to us. We had lost troops, ground, and time. We have also lost Lagos to Irosi. What a terrible situation. So let me take a break, a tea break. Thank you. So it is a long read, if you must know, and that is just like the first hour. We are currently going into how the whole plan was looking so good until it wasn't so good anymore. And then things started falling apart right in the middle of it. Maha, drink tea. So let us continue. For those who are still here with us, we drove on through Shagamu to Ijebu-Ode. The East-Wide rioters of that area were still surging towards the road in hundreds and in various locations along the route between Lagos and Ijebu-Ode. They carried twigs and chanted war songs in continuation of their political uprising against the finished government of Akintola. As they surged forward and saw military vehicles, they hesitated to give a fight. They moved off the road and were silent. They broke into their war song again, running into the bush. A young officer in one of the ferrets made to shoot at the crowd, but I forbade him, thinking in my mind that these people should be dancing and rejoicing because their enemies had been seized and eliminated. But meanwhile, it was hidden from their eyes. By the time we arrived at Ijebu-Ode, in those slow-moving ferrets, it was 3:45 in the afternoon. We stopped at the first petrol station to refuel. 4 o'clock met us at the petrol station and a radio was turned aloud therein. Then a dreadful announcement was made. There has been a mutiny by a dissident section of the Nigerian army this morning. The Prime Minister, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, and the Federal Minister of Finance, Chief Festus Okotie-Eboh, were apprehended and taken to an unknown destination. And the radio continued, of course. As soon as the squadron subaltern heard this announcement, he felt horrified. He summoned the drivers of the ferrets and, without saying a word to either Anuforo or me, led the 4 ferrets away towards Lagos. Anuforo was the first to observe this. He rushed out of the station, commandeered the first available car, and pursued the ferrets. He soon overtook them and tried to halt the leading ferret commander by the subaltern, but the young officer used the ferret to damage the car. He cocked his gun and pointed it towards Anuforo, ready to shoot, so the latter allowed him to go. After that, Anuforo commandeered another vehicle and drove back to the petrol station where I was waiting. With the loss of ferrets, our Lagos operations of January 15 came to an abrupt end. We could no longer return to Lagos. And with the recent radio announcement, the possibility of getting troops in Enugu had vanished. There was no news from the other capitals. The announcement did not indicate what had happened in Enugu, Benin, Ibadan, and Kaduna. The only course open to us was to continue the journey to Benin and Enugu. If our troop had acted in those places, it would be easy for us to contact Kaduna. So, agreeing, Anuforo and I continued our journey using civilian vehicles. Ibadan. Now, our loss of ground and power in Lagos had not actually been repeated anywhere else. Our original plan did not include the takeover of the 5 existing governments of the Federation and the appointment of governors in Ibadan, Enugu, Benin, and Kaduna. That would have been a continuation of the status quo, which we did not want. Our real aim was to knock off the existing government and immediately split the country into smaller units with a more powerful government in the center. This was the reason the orders were not given to our colleagues in Ibadan, Enugu, and Benin to take over the government or make radio announcements. This was the reason why Unzeogu, who had unqualified success in Kaduna, did not rush to make any announcement over the radio. The all-important and only radio announcement was to have come from Lagos. It was because we failed to make the announcement in Lagos, and Irosi came on the air with a contrary announcement that Unzeogu had to act for the revolution by making his own announcement. Later in the day in Kaduna. It is essential to be clear on this point before examining the success of the Ibadan and Enugu operations. The unit that operated for us in Ibadan left Abeokuta around midnight. It consisted of 2 officers and 21 other ranks. They traveled in a Land Rover and a 3-tonner. They had written orders to arrest both Akintola and his deputy, Chief Fani Kayode. Having made Ibadan before the H hour, which was 2 a.m., 200 hours, they disrupted both the telephone communication and the electric power supply. At the 8th hour, they were at the house of Chief Fani Kayode. Having gained entry into his house, they summoned the deputy premier, who surrendered to them without a fight. Fani Kayode came towards the soldiers with both hands up and shouting, "I surrender, I surrender. Don't kill me, oh, don't kill me, oh. I beg, don't kill me, oh. I beg, don't kill me, oh." The soldiers started to ask themselves if that was really the man they called Fani Kayode. Sorry, Fani Power. Okay, they said the soldiers started to ask themselves if that was really the man called Fani Power. Those who knew him confirmed that he was. As in all other cases, the soldiers had orders not to kill him or kill anybody who surrendered. So they took him away under arrest. Later, they were at Premier Lodge. They tried to use the same method to arrest Chief Akintola. The latter gave them a fight and opened gunfire on them, wounding the unit commander, Captain Nwobosi, and his second in command. In the melee that followed, Chief Akintola was shot. Captain Nwobosi had been ordered to bring his unit's 100 mm pack howitzer with him with some live rounds to Lagos after his Ibadan operation. Nwobosi acted accordingly. He ordered one of his sergeants to return to Abeokuta and collect the gun plus live ammunition and a team of 12 gunners. They were to report to the 2nd Battalion Barracks Ikeja. The sergeant did exactly as he was commanded. But when he arrived at Ikeja cantonment with his crew, they were all arrested. Before then, Captain Nwobosi himself and his second in command and a few soldiers had driven straight from Ibadan to Lagos in the Land Rover. They took from Ibadan to Lagos, they took the arrested Chief Fani Kayode with them. They made straight for the Federal Guards Officers' Mess, Ikoyi. Arriving there at about 7 o'clock in the morning, unfortunately, they landed into the hands of Ironsi's troops and were all arrested. Later, their own captive, Chief Fani Kayode, was released by the reactionaries. In Enugu, the story of the Enugu operation was perpetrated by a mishap. First, Lieutenant Oguchi did not leave Lagos on January 13, as was previously planned, because his military vehicle was not ready. Finally, he left on the 14th but suffered a breakdown on the way. He eventually arrived at Enugu in the early hours of the 15th. He had borne written orders with him from Lagos. However, on his arrival at Enugu, he found the final signal that ordered him to go ahead with the execution of the task. He organized a small body of troops with a Land Rover and a 3-tonner. He sent a small detachment to the Eastern Nigeria Broadcasting Service. This detachment seized the station, stopped the normal program, and ordered the broadcasters to play only military music while awaiting latest news from Lagos. At the same time, Oguchi himself made for the Premier's Lodge. Therein, he found that he had not only the Premier Dr. Okpara in his hand, but also an august visitor, Archbishop Makarios, the president of Cyprus, who, after the conclusion of the Commonwealth Prime Ministers Conference in Lagos on January 12th, had arrived in Enugu on the 13th on a state visit. With such a man of international repute present, Lieutenant Oguchi could do no more than bide his time. A couple of hours later, when the Archbishop had departed, he placed Dr. Okpara under house arrest, deploying his troop to guard the lodge. He himself went to the ENBS and made a tentative announcement that the army had taken over power. He stopped at that while he awaited more news from Lagos. Later on, his own troops were replaced by those sent on Irosi's orders, and Dr. Okpara was transferred to a prison detention. Because of this lateness to start, Oguchi had not yet sent troops to Benin, before Nronsi's men took over. In Kaduna, our D-Day started earliest in Kaduna. Exercise Damisa, which had been organized for several weeks and rehearsed on the evening of January 13, was finally staged. Essentially, Exercise Damisa was a night exercise aimed at capturing enemy objectives and holding the grounds captured. On the D-Day, the exercise was completed at about 1:30 hours. That's 1:30 a.m. Then the officers were summoned and briefed about the political situation in the country. They were told about the decision of the revolutionary officers to bring the situation under control by a prompt military action which had been planned to be nationwide. The officers who hailed from every part of the country were given the option to participate in the action or withdraw. All of them enthusiastically volunteered to participate, and they were given specific orders as follows. A, the arrest of the Northern Premier, the Sardauna of Sokoto, and Alhaji Aliyu Makama Bida, the Northern Region Minister of Finance, Major Nzeogu, a captain, and 2 subalterns. The arrest of Northern Governor, Sir Kashim Ibrahim, and Brigadier Ademoyega, that was to be carried out by Major Onwatuegu. C, the arrest of Colonel R.A. Shodende was to be carried out by Captain Ude and a subaltern. D, the occupation of strategic locations, Captain Bule and 6 subalterns. In addition, this group had the task of informing the brigade headquarters staff officers of the coup to ensure their support. The staff officers included Major Alfonso Kechi, the brigade major. After the orders, live ammunitions were issued to all groups. Vehicles were allocated and the groups dispersed to their various locations. The Nzeogu group made for the Premier's Lodge. It was an impregnable castle with a massive iron gate fitted with automatic alarms. Because of this, 5 rounds of the 84 mm Carl Gustav anti-tank recoilless rifle had to be fired to destroy the gate and gain entrance into the lodge. During the firing of the Carl Gustav, the front part of the gate caught fire. In spite of that, the Premier resisted arrest and sought to escape from the building. In the scuffle that ensued, he was shot. After that, the group made for the quarters of Alhaji Aliyu Makama Bida. He was missed altogether as he had traveled out of town. Next, the group went to the residence of Colonel Shodende. He resisted arrest and was shot. Then the group moved to the brigade headquarters to receive the report of the remainder of the operation. Major Nzeogu, who had been injured during the attack on the Premier's Lodge, was treated there. Soon, Major Onwatuegu reported to the headquarters with the arrested Governor Sir K. Ibrahim, who had conducted himself most gently and had been treated cautiously. He was detained at the headquarters for some hours, but was later allowed to go home. On the other hand, Brigadier Ademoyega was not brought to the headquarters under arrest. He had been shot. Captain Bule's group took control of all the strategic points in the city, including the local station of the Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation, the ammunition service depot, the Northern Nigerian radio and television stations, the telephone exchange, the state house, and so on. In addition, they set up roadblocks on the various approaches to the town. Having done this, they contacted the staff officers of the brigade headquarters and informed them of the revolution, and at the same time requested their support. By the first light of January 15, Major Nzeogu was in complete control of the situation in Kaduna, but there were still some unit commanders in the city, and in Zaria were still some unit commanders, in Zaria and Kano, who were not part of the revolution and had yet to be contacted in order to know whether they would support the revolution. This included Major A. Madebo of the Nigerian Army Artillery, Major Hassan U. Kassina of the Nigerian Reconnaissance Corps NRC, Lieutenant Colonel Bassey of the Nigerian Army Depot at Zaria, and Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu of the 5th Battalion, Kano. It was Captain Bule who had orders to contact Keshi, and it was the latter who contacted Madebo. Madebo found that the subalterns of his own unit had already turned full-fledged revolutionaries to the point of obeying only Nzeogu. Therefore, he reluctantly gave his support, but was minded to foil the revolution. This was because Madebo was tribalistic to the core. For instance, he had told Ifejuna long before the coup that Madebo, believed that in Nigeria, tribal loyalties were stronger than national loyalty. Nzeogu himself went to see Major Hassan U. Kassina at home. He discussed the situation with the latter, who albeit rather reluctantly gave his support and ordered the officers of his own unit to report to Nzeogu for further deployment. Next, Nzeogu sent a message to Lieutenant Colonel Bassey, a veteran of the Second World War. The latter did not know what the revolution was all about. Nonetheless, he submitted to the trend of things as they appeared and gave in to the revolution. There remained Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu. Ojukwu was both crafty and selfish, and would neither give nor withhold his loyalty. He was running with the hare and chasing with the hounds. He was an opportunist who put himself above safety of the nation. When at first Nzeogu contacted him on the telephone, he was fully in agreement with the revolution. Soon after that, he was in touch with Ironsi, to whom he pledged his loyalty. After that, he was playing hide and seek with Nzeogu, mainly biding his time. The activities of Nzeogu on the morning of the coup were directed towards the consolidation of his night's victory. He moved quite fast to ensure that those officers who did not participate in the coup were given their chances to declare either way. But Nigerians, being what they were, fought shy of the truth and declared for the revolution, when in fact they were opposed to it. Admittedly though, if the revolution had been luckier, if it had remained in the hands of his forebears, it would certainly have survived and triumphed over its enemies. Unfortunately, that was not so. Now, having received the professions of loyalty, Nzeogu proceeded to bring all the military and air force units of the northern region under his express command. This step was absolutely necessary. In the first place, it had been a regular military drill to hold firmly to the ground won. That ground to him was northern Nigeria, and he had to hold it tight. Secondly, by noon on the 15th, it had become clear to him that operations in Lagos had been compromised. He had received neither military nor civilian communication from any of us. Therefore, he could see that the battle was not yet fully won. Like the soldier that he was, Nzeogu was prepared and willing to carry on with the fight. By the morning of 15th, he had summoned the regional civil servant to his headquarters. Having received their pledges of loyalty, he briefed them on how to carry on their duties under his interim administration. He knew that things would soon have to change, but in the meantime, the governing of the people did not have to be interrupted. In the same way, he brought the police under control, and having received their pledge of loyalty, ordered them to carry on their duties with deference to the spirit of the revolution. Again, he knew that things were bound to change if the revolution succeeded. As for the politicians, no further action was contemplated against them than that they should sign a pledge to refrain from further politicking while they returned to their private businesses. This also was an action in furtherance of the principle of the revolution. Only a few of them were detained in the prison custody. After midday on the 15th, when the situation report from Lagos showed clearly that the capital was not in the hands of the revolutionaries, Nzeogwu did the only right and proper thing. He immediately prepared a broadcast which helped to establish it quite clearly to the south and as well to the outside world that the north was firmly in the hands of the revolutionaries. Later the same day, after Nronsi had broadcast his wicked and reactionary message about the so-called rebels, Nzeogwu went on the air and broadcast his brilliant, revolutionary, and highly edifying declarations. It went thus: in the name of the Supreme Council of the Revolution of the Nigerian Armed Forces, I declare martial law over the northern province of Nigeria. The constitution is suspended, and the regional government and elected assemblies are hereby dissolved. All political, cultural, tribal, and trade union activities, all together with all demonstrations and unauthorized gatherings, excluding religious worship, are banned until further notice. The aim of the Revolutionary Council is to establish a strong, united, and prosperous nation, free from corruption and internal strife. Our method of achieving this is strictly military, but we have no doubt that every Nigerian will give us maximum cooperation by assisting the regime and not disturbing the peace during the slight changes that are taking place. I am to assure all foreigners living and working in this part of Nigeria that their rights will continue to be respected. All treaty obligations previously entered into with any nation will be respected. And we hope that such nations will respect our country's territorial integrity and will avoid taking sides with enemies of the revolution and enemies of the people. My dear countrymen, you will hear and probably see a lot being done by certain bodies charged by the Supreme Council with the duties of national integration, supreme justice, general security, and property recovery. As an interim measure, all permanent secretaries, corporation chairmen, and senior heads of departments are allowed to make decisions until new organs are functioning. So long as such decisions are not contrary to the aims and wishes of the Supreme Council, no minister or parliamentary secretary possesses administrative or other forms of control over any ministry, even if they are not considered too dangerous to be arrested. This is not a time for long speech making. And so let me acquaint you with the proclamation in the extraordinary orders of the day, which the Supreme Council has promulgated. This will be modified as the situation improves. You are hereby warned that looting, arson, homosexuality, rape, embezzlement, bribery, and corruption, obstruction of the revolution, sabotage, subversion, false alarms, and assistance to foreign invaders are all offenses punishable by death sentence. Demonstrations and unauthorized assembly, non-cooperation with the revolutionary troops are punishable in a grave manner up to death. Refusal or neglect to perform national duties or any task that may of necessity be ordered by the local military commanders in support of the change will be punishable by a sentence imposed by the local military commander. Spying, harmful or injurious publication and broadcast of troops' movement or action will be punished by any suitable sentence deemed fit by the local military commander. Shouting of slogans, loitering, and rowdy behavior will be rectified by any sentence of incarceration or any more severe sentence deemed fit by the local military commander. Doubtful loyalty will be penalized by imprisonment or any more severe punishment. Illegal possession or carrying of firearms, smuggling, or trying to escape with documents, valuables, including money or other assets vital to the running of any establishment will be punished by death sentence. Wavering or sitting on the fence or failing to declare open loyalty. Instead, the revolution will be regarded as an act of hostility, punishable by any sentence deemed suitable by the local military commander. Tearing down an order of the day or proclamation or other authorized notices will be penalized by death. This is the end of the extraordinary order of the day, which you will soon begin to see displayed in public. My dear countrymen, no citizen should have anything to fear, so long as that citizen is law-abiding, and if that citizen has religiously obeyed the native laws of the country and those set down in every heart and conscience since October 1, 1960. Our enemies are the political profiteers, the swindlers, the men in high and low places that seek bribes and demand 10%, those that seek to keep the country divided permanently so that they can remain in office as ministers or VIPs at least, the tribalists, the nepotists, those that make the country look big for nothing before international circles, those that have corrupted our society and put the Nigerian political calendar back by their words and deeds. Like good soldiers we are not promising anything miraculous or spectacular. But what we do promise every law-abiding citizen is freedom from fear and all forms of oppression, freedom from general inefficiency, and freedom to live and strive in every field of human endeavor, both nationally and internationally. We promise